Welcome, everybody. Much awaited, much due crypto update video. I'm not coming to you idly, but with detailed analysis to give you on Bitcoin right now and my view as to where it's going. The very last time that I did a crypto summit video, I talked about the fact that the floor was getting ready to fall out. At that time, I believe it was right around 83,000. And I said, guys, we're definitely going to have a capitulation moment any day now, and we're likely to go as low as 73,000. Handful of days later, if not the next day, it fell all the way down to the $74,000 range. Now, it's been slowly rebuilding, and I would even say that it's had a breakout moment. And I've come back to give you a very strong prediction as to where we're going to end up with this move, as well as to review some extremely important technical indicators. Now, I want to take a step back and just talk about the overall markets and what's been going on. It's been an interesting news day. We have had a very profitable run. 3 days, the market's been ripping off of its lows. And I had said repeatedly that big tech likely wasn't going to go lower right now, and that the bears were carrying more risk right now than the bulls. Even though it was choppy and even though it was a tough road, lo and behold, at the 11th hour, we've climbed steadily towards big tech earnings. If we take a step back and look at Netflix and the straddle that we had, those calls are up close to 200% today. Google ripping after hours, hitting high targets. Now, I would love to tell you that I had the fortitude to hold my large Google position into earnings. I did not, but I'm not at all upset about it. You know, you've got to moderate risk, especially when you've made big decisions and then you got big rewards. It's okay to take some money off the table and breathe for a little while. And that's what I'm doing with the big tech plays. Now, a handful of these look like they're setting up to rip more. Okay. I talked about it in my Discord today. Amazon, Meta, and Apple all look like they're ready for a breakout, as well as Google. And we might see continued highs there. But not every big tech company is showing the same strength. Some of them are showing weakness already. But I'll tell you right now, today was a reminder of the fact that the bears are likely to get trapped. I saw people in the comment section loading up on puts today, and I'm going to warn you guys that we literally went from a bear trap to a bull trap, right? We're in a bull trap right now. So just be careful because people are getting snagged both ways. Now, we don't have any change of news right now. We know that right now the big catalyst that will eventually move the market would be for some uncertainty regarding the tariff war to unwind, as well as some uncertainty as to whether or not the Fed will cut rates. We need more clarity there, but we need to get more data. But right now, the tariff war is an absolute disaster. I don't know if you guys were picking up on this news story, but today, Donald Trump, it was a hashtag, mockery. China was clowning on Trump and the tariff war because he recently sort of stepped back again from his very strong position, saying that, hey, maybe we will knock off a couple hundred percentage points against China, and maybe we'll de-escalate a little bit to bring them to the table. Well, that was not received well in China. Okay, they basically thought they kind of were taking a victory lap on winning the first round of the tariff war. So why do I bring that up? I'm not here to talk politics. I'm just telling you that it's a clear reminder that both sides are taking up, taking up their positions, and it's not peace right now that's at hand. They're not at the table. And I'm sure that we'll get a reaction from Donald Trump reacting to the fact that China is 250 million people are clowning on him. All of this, I'm not talking about it for the sake of politics. I'm talking about it for the sake of how unstable the markets are right now. And we are swinging from lows to highs. Now, I do have an opinion as to where we're going. I still see the risk against the bears, okay? I still see the bears thinking, well, I'm going to try to catch the top and I'm going to try to get the fade. I'm going to sell the rip. Now, I have been selling the rip because I'm locking in some profits because I'm trying not to be greedy. But I think that there is still a lot of risk. Even if we pull back a little bit, you'll see the bears will start piling in. Their positions will slightly go into the profit. And then we have the risk of ripping again. I do have a very specific target on the SPY and a very specific target on Bitcoin. And I'll get to that here in just a minute. I'm also going to touch on some XRP today. And part of what I'm going to share, as it can sometimes normally be, is going to be a rip your heart out of the bulls on crypto. Not because I don't believe that Bitcoin's going higher, but because I probably don't believe it's going as high as some people think it will. Let me bring on my special guest so we can have someone here to chat with. Mark, how are you doing today? Mr. Tribal Trades is in the house. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks, Josh. Great to be on the show again, and warm welcome to everybody tuning in. Great to be on here again, Josh.
You sure you want to be associated with what I'm getting ready to lay down on Bitcoin? Because I'm getting ready to blow the house up.
Yeah, well, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, and I've got some thoughts as well, of course. But it's been great. I mean, the last time we were on, I think we were both talking about 73K. We got to 74K. That's pretty close. I know that you got some at 74. I got some at 74K. And that trade is looking pretty good. It got as high as 94K, just in a small little pullback at the moment. But certainly crypto is looking a lot brighter since we last chatted.
Yeah, it is looking good. And I think we're on a pretty good run right now. Queen says, I got to agree to disagree, Mr. Josh. Well, you haven't even heard my case yet, but we shall see. So let's take a minute before I even get into the charts, because the charts are fascinating. I think you guys will love what I'm going to lay down today. The title of this video is Crypto Breakout, because we absolutely have had some very clear buy signals and some very clear breakout movement from this recent downtrend. Now, I'm going to suggest an exact percentage that we could pull back before we rip higher, but I do have a target in mind as to where we'll rip to. And I want to remind you guys of something I said in a recent video. I said, we're likely going to, every time I came and gave you the bad news of where we were at, I kept saying the biggest problem that you guys are going to have in the coming days is if we get up to 90 and then 100 and you start getting whole again, are you going to sell? Are you going to wait for 114? Are you, when we get to 114, are you thinking that your altcoins are going to make brand new highs? Maybe they won't. Well, we're going to hash that out a little bit. Mark, before I get into the chart, let's talk a little bit about the hash rate and the minor capitulation. I'm going to let you lead on that. I'll give a little bit of commentary on it, but we talked about this the last time as well, that basically in a nutshell, it was getting expensive for these Bitcoiners to mine Bitcoin, right? It was getting very expensive. The electrical costs were high. And what happens is a lot of them who aren't managing their books very well to keep the lights on and to stay in business and to pay everybody, they're forced to sell their Bitcoin position just to stay alive. And so when this happens, when the cost of mining Bitcoin goes up, it's a squeeze on the miners. And so all of the smart money, they don't buy because they don't want to be buying while the miners are panic selling because they have to keep the lights on. And so they wait for that moment of capitulation. It's the miners' capitulation to occur. We hit the top of that scale again, just like we did back in 2021 and in previous cycles. We hit the top of that scale again, and ever since then, Bitcoin's been climbing because that problem is behind us. Mark, what would you say about it?
Yeah, exactly. The minor capitulation is a great signal, and you've got to wait to actually see the buy signal. And I'll just bring up my screen here, Josh. Here on, let's look.
You know what? You're no longer sharing your screen, Mark.
Is it sharing here? Can
Let
we see
me
it?
give it
No?
another shot for you. There you go.
Yeah.
Well,
It's gone. Yeah.
your screen's coming and going, but let me show it to them on my screen real quick. All right, guys. All right, so here is the hash rate signal, and I'm going to just make it so you can see. sort of the long history and price of Bitcoin. And you can see that down here, you get these green, light, and then bright green. These are basically telling you that it's getting ready to print a buy signal. And whenever it prints a buy signal, that's typically when the miners have capitulated and the price of Bitcoin begins to go up, right? There's a little bit of a slowdown in this range. We got another precursor green, we printed another blue, and we got this huge move up, right? And of course, we began to consolidate. We got a couple greens, printed the blue again, we ran up. Okay, obviously you guys can see the pattern. And here in recent days, we've been consolidating. We got a couple of the light green, bright green. We printed a blue, and we've shot up. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so I mean, that hash ribbons indicator, I don't know, are you on the weekly chart there, Josh?
I'm on the weekly,
if you
correct.
Yeah, so that has rarely failed. In fact, now that buy signal has now been validated, and only 3 times out of 21 times has that buy signal ever failed. And one of those times was during the lockdown phase there. So it's a bit of a black swan event. So really, that was a very, very strong buy signal. And we shared it on the show the last time that we were on, Josh, and we talked about how much of a legit this had been. And I had been adding Bitcoin even at those levels before we hit further lower. And it wasn't just the buy signal. There were also other things as well, such as the stochastic RSI on the weekly time frame. Historically, when the blue line has crossed over the 20 line on the weekly, it has. I look back in Bitcoin's history, and I haven't seen a time where that has failed, where you would not have ended up in profit on that trade. We also broke out from a historical downtrend trend line that had been holding down price since January. We broke out of that with a strong weekly candle on the 14th of April and had a weekly close above that. After that weekly close, of course, we have absolutely smashed through the 200-day moving average. What I'm looking for, Josh, is historically that 200-day moving average has been the line in the sand. When Bitcoin has been in a downtrend like that, generally speaking, if it can close that this week above that, this will generally mean the move will continue to the upside. And so that's what I'm looking for on Sunday. I'm looking for the 200-day moving average for that weekly candle to close above that. The one concern that I did have, and I know you'll like this, you're a big MACD guy, and I love the MACD as well, that on the monthly time frame there with the MACD, that's coming real close to crossing over. And historically, when that's crossed over, that's been the end of the bull run. And so we haven't seen that. It got close. I think now it's going to hold, and we could see a little bit more upside there. But that's a real big one that I'm looking for. And of course,
on what time frame, Mark, are you referring to?
The monthly time frame there.
Yeah.
So the monthly time frame, the MACD, and then of course the Gaussian channel. Again, historically, when Bitcoin has hit that, I might be able to bring. I'll just give one more try to bring up this chart here, Josh, and we can see. So the folks at home can see what we're looking at here. If that's going to come up, let me know if that's showing now. There, we've got that.
No,
not showing.
No. Let me. I'll pull it up for them. Okay, guys. I'm going to go through. Thank you, Mark, for your view on that. I'm going to go through the MACD, the RSI, and just kind of go through some things that I'm looking at right now on all of this. So yeah, Mark was talking about the MACD. Now I just want to point out, we got to do this together. You guys will see it. You can see back here that we had this expansion of the MACD line moving away from the signal line. Okay. And sort of that previous ramp up that we had back in 2021, okay? You can see that at that time, these lines were separating, okay? And eventually they got too far apart and they began to come back together. Right before it crossed under, bringing us into what would be considered the winter phase. Right before that, it had a final curl up moment, okay? And it did just a little bit better as far as it gave one more momentum peak higher. Okay. Very interestingly, we've had something similar going on here. We have moved up, gotten this far expansion move away, right? And this is actually, it went right before it began to come and cross over in this price range. It had another push higher, giving us this second higher high here on the monthly time frame. Okay, let me move these percentage bars so you guys can see that more carefully. Okay, so very, very similar to here. Now, the difference is that right when we're beginning to make that crossover again, we started getting a little bit of a curl up here at the
Mm.
last minute. Okay. And so, what I want to use this monthly chart, I'm going to go through a bunch of charts with you real quick. But what I want you to understand is that we really are at the extended end of this Bitcoin move. Okay. Momentum is absolutely fading, and we are very close with the eventual peak here that I think we're going to get, which I'm going to give you an estimate as to where I think we're going. We're going to get a little higher, and then we're going to then drop beneath the signal line, and at that
Yeah.
point, we're going to begin to trend towards the winter. Okay. We are getting this bump right now, this macro event of the market going on to test its highs. And I think that that's going to continue. As I've been saying for really over a week, the bigger risk right now is to the bears. And I have a ton of bears in my community that I saw buying puts today. And I think those puts might be okay for Monday because I think we could get a little pullback. But I think it's like I said, the bigger risk is to the bears and the situation that we get some positive news from the president and the market decides to rip. I'll show you where I think we'll go on the SPY, but right now we're focused on Bitcoin. Let's kind of clean up this chart, and I'm going to go over a couple other
Well, Josh,
extremely.
one thing, can you just highlight November 2021 there and just show where the MACD crossed over. If you look where Bitcoin's all-time high was on November 2021, right there, and just go down to the bottom and just go straight down to where the MACD is on the monthly. There it is there. And what you've said is 100%, and you and I are speaking the same language here. And you go over to the MACD where it currently is, and what you've absolutely nailed it is when we see a crossover on that monthly MACD that's current, and they're not far away from each other. That's usually been the end, just like it was in November 2021. That blue line crossing below and bringing that capitulation to the downside.
Yeah, I agree with Mark. And this video is really meant to prepare people because I can tell you right
Yeah.
now that everything I'm saying in today's video, there's a handful of additional refinements and a handful of additional indicators that we're going to look at. But the truth is, it's exactly what I said the last time I talked about crypto, which is that the biggest challenge that most people are going to have is when they see their accounts recover and they begin to see XRP creeping back to $3, a little bit
Mm.
closer to when a lot of people flooded in. The biggest
Yeah.
decision they're going to have to make is whether or not they begin to get out of that position because they're almost whole, or whether they're going to hope that everything is just going to blast to the moon and that we're going to
Mm.
have some extended Bitcoin rally when we're already at the extension of the extension. And I know that folks out there disagree, but I will say this: within $1,000 of Bitcoin, I have not been wrong one time from the crypto bottom till today. And I'll just say that I'm going to take my own advice and make some money with it. You guys do what you want to do. Let's go back into the Bitcoin chart because I want to dial in a few other important technicals. We're going to look at the weekly time frame because right now Bitcoin is giving us a buy signal. And I want to make sure that you guys are understanding that we
Yeah.
do have a buy signal indicating that we are getting ready to go higher. Now, but I want to examine the timeline with you guys. So let's take the MACD for a moment. Every time we've had a cross up from a cross down right there to a cross back up, it's led to an explosive move. Right here, this candle was a buy signal that if you got in at Bitcoin at 62,600, later on you could have sold it for 110,000 almost. I mean, a near $50,000 gain. Well, you guys
Yeah.
can see right now that we are getting ready. The MACD is curling up towards that signal line, and we got this huge move up. And it's very possible that we get another cross on this, and it's very possible that we get a final move up into this zone. And or we could actually come and we could come back here. Let me just clean this up a moment. We could come back up and not cross up and continue down. Okay. Now let's go into the RSI real quick because I want to show you something about time frame real quick here. But I'll come back to this chart and we'll look at the RSI. Okay. Now, the last time we had a cross up on the RSI, let's begin to look at all of the recent cross ups on the RSI because all of them have been part of the print story. Okay. Right here, you see a cross up. Right here, you see a cross up. Right here, you see a cross up. And we just crossed up, giving us this massive green candle. So this is a significant moment. I want to look at how long do these bullish runs last when there's a cross up. If we come down here, get our date and price range tool, this very first one before the price peaked out, lasted 126 days. This one here, when it crossed over and before price, it actually kind of had two moves, was about 90 days. Right here, when it crossed up before price peaked out, was 90 days. And so the typical move when we are moving above the RSI line typically is 90 days. And so I just want to point out that we could have a 90-day window where we are moving forward and hitting the top. And that would put us exactly to July 25th. So are we going to run hard between now and July 25th? Well, if you go in very, very carefully and you examine these moves, now I want to remind you guys, some people don't understand when you're looking at chart that you've got an algorithmic and a logarithmic view. Okay, when you go to the algorithmic view, it allows you to see the chart, because the further back you go, you see it all trails off, right? When you go to the logarithmic view, it allows you to see the chart differently. So why does that matter? It matters because back when you're looking at this previous crossover down here on the RSI, this little move down doesn't seem that significant, does it? It just looks like 2 weeks after we got the cross up, we had one red candle, a green candle, and it rocketed higher. But in truth, that move down over there, if you take the info line tool and you go from the top to the bottom, it's actually about 11.5%. So now we come to the current chart, and I might be going fast for some people, but we're just going to go fast because it's the main points I'm trying to make. If we had a similar backtrace after that initial cross up on the RSI, that would bring us back to this 84. That's 11.5% down from where this candle currently is. And that would bring us to this area, which I'm referring to as a bounce zone, 86 to 84,000. Okay. So I'm letting you guys know that as far as, and on top of it will allow us to do something which is actually quite common in technicals, which is to break out of a descending line of resistance. And you guys can see that we did that here. We've broken out of descending line resistance, and oftentimes it will backtest that line, and then it'll go and get a confirmation of breaking the previous candle. It'll go on to make a higher high. And so I guess to keep it very, very simple, and I know that's a lot, we have a big fat buy signal with the minor capitulation and the hash rate ribbon. Then we're followed up with a confirmation of an RSI cross, which happens basically, every 6 to 8 months that cross occurs. And then the bull run that ensues after it lasts around 90 days. And yet this late in the cycle, it would suggest that this final push up would last a maximum of that 90 days, and it would put us right in the middle of July. And so, what's interesting about that, and where could we possibly get? Well, I've made mention of this many times before, and I actually said it boldly in a couple videos, and I even said it on one of Larry Stock Up with Larry Jones's page when he was taking care of his dad. I did a Bitcoin video, and on that video, you can go back and look. I said, guys, in the dark and bleak days of Bitcoin, when Bitcoin was below 80K, I said, I really think that we will hit 114,000 to 116,000 before this is over. And worst case scenario, we'll hit 100K. And it's going to be a very, very tough decision for a lot of people whether or not they're going to preserve capital and protect the money that they've got, finally use a stop loss, right? Or whether or not they're going to get above 100K and begin to believe all of the hypesters that are on YouTube. I'm not going to apologize for the fact that I've not been wrong on Bitcoin. Okay, so I've never led you guys astray. Can I always guess everything, the exact day it's going to happen and the exact dollar it's going to hit? No, no. But the big picture view is, in my opinion, been consistently correct. And so what I'm telling you guys is your range on Bitcoin right now is going to be, in my opinion, there's a possibility between 100 to 116,000 max. And I, at this moment in time, do not believe that a lot of the altcoins are going to reach their previous highs. And I'm going to get into that here in a minute with XRP because I have a dollar target. Now, when Bitcoin capitulated down to 74, I've got a ton of Bitcoin that I don't intend to sell. It's sort of legacy crypto for me. I'm going to hold it through the storm and add another 4 or 5 on the lows when I feel like we've got there, so that Bitcoin will be just something my kids inherit at some point. But when it comes to crypto, I'm more actively swinging that. When we came down, I targeted XRP. And so I want to see XRP rip. I want to see it get back to highs, but I'm realistic as to where it's going to go. And I'm going to give you guys that here in just a minute. But Mark, you've heard me say that we are definitely 90% of this run has been booked. And this additional pump up is a gift for a lot of people that that didn't use stop losses, didn't take profits, and a lot of people's friends are going to jump in ahead of us still. I remember when Bitcoin was topping out, and this is a fact. You guys all know I came out, it was on Keenan Grace's Stock Squad show. I came out and announced that I sold every last penny of every crypto I had at the end of November. And I'm not going to tell you all the reasons I did it because there's a lot of reasons I had, but one of them is I had 3 pastors, guys that I love, that I've known through different churches or friendships throughout the years. They came out of the woodwork and they said, Josh, help me get into crypto. And it's sort of the rule of thumb that when your Aunt Gladys or somebody that normally doesn't touch it randomly calls you and says, hey, I want to get rich on the crypto train. When I literally had 3 of them contact me in the last couple weeks of November, and I was like, wow, this is a sign. This is a sign that everybody's coming to the yard, but it's too late. And that, along with a lot of other reasons, I cashed out, and it turned out to be a great decision. Now, I'm telling you guys, and I told you when Mark and I did that last video, I said there'll be one more chance for everybody to get out. But I'm not sure there's going to be a chance that you're going to get up to 150. There's reason to technically believe that Bitcoin could hit 150. And I'm not telling you that the minute it hits 114, you just cash out, even though some of you might consider doing it if you don't have the ability to manage it and watch it, carefully. Some of you need to be careful with it because you're just going to watch all your money disappear. You can put a stop loss. In my opinion, when this thing runs up to 114, stop loss in at 112, and you've got to have an exit plan at some point. But I knew that I was going to come out and that part of this is bullish. I see us pumping. I could see a pullback on Bitcoin to 86 to 84K one more time over the next 2 weeks before we rocket the final push up somewhere in the middle of July, coming to that final price point of around 114 to 116. Now, I'll say one last thing. It would take a perfect storm to get more out of this market. A perfect storm would be, and that's why I led with the commentary regarding China. It would be all the world countries come to the table and give us an incredibly beneficial trade deal. And, that the Fed says, you know what, I'm feeling generous. Let's knock these rates down and get this economy going. And in that perfect storm, we could see some incredible blow off top. And I would have to come back and say, guys, we're in like a bull storm stampede and this thing's not going to stop. But apart from that, this chart has given every single signal that we are at the 11th hour, and everybody needs to assess if they do get one more chance to get up to 110 and slightly above, what are you going to do with it? Let me know in the comments section. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with you. And one of the comments, interesting enough, said, "What about the sell in May and go away?" And actually, I'm going to do a show on that on my YouTube channel in the next few days, and I'll give you a bit of a sneak preview. But interesting enough, in the last 2 years, Bitcoin sell in May and go away theory, it only dropped 6% each time between May and then October. And so really that hasn't been as strong as what people may think that there is a big, and even in the stock market, the sell in May and go is looking at the S&P 500 the last 2 years, 3.72% and 2.5% green, 2.5% green, 3.72% negative, and Bitcoin was 8.9% negative, 8.96% negative, and 6.55% negative over the last 2 years, 2023 and 2024. So I think the sell in May and go away might be more a buy in May or stay in May and play. Obviously, always going to assess the charts, price is truth. And the first thing I want to see is I want to see a bullish weekly close above the 200-day moving average, sitting at about 88,000. I would agree, Josh, that I could see a pullback around that level or close to that level. The 20 EMA on the weekly actually didn't really get a retest, and usually that does to confirm that bullish trend. And so that's moving up rapidly. So I could see something around that area. Maybe there's a wick down to that 86, 85K area there, and that would be a good higher low and would provide a great entry for those who may have missed this move. I definitely wouldn't be encouraging any buys at this level. I don't think Josh would be either. After it's just gone 74 to 94K, you're looking for that pullback for that higher low and that confirmed higher low where you can get on the trade and then ride that up. And so, yeah, so May will be interesting. We might get rate cuts in May, of course. That can help the narrative there. The tariff situation could be resolved. And so it is possible that we do see a July finish. I had more picked around that August, September time there. But of course, we could see a July, fly in July. Usually September usually is fairly bearish, and that being the end. But of course, July could be the end. Gosh, May could be the end. And I think this is really where Josh and I have really stipulated very strongly how much of a trader's market that this is. And I think that if you're married to your bags, you'll drown with them. And you can't get married to your bags. You can't get emotionally attached to them. You just got to be prepared. You're in profit. Take the profit. Nobody ever lost money taking profit. Oh no, I sold too early. Okay, well then, just scale back your position, size. Take your profit and let the rest run. Get into house money or whatever. Josh, I think, was great because he sold basically before everything dropped, and he was prepared to cut his entire position. And I love that. And I've learned from that. And I took all my profits at the top when Josh cut his entire position. I'm like, I should have done more than that. And I think I could see that there were those top signals that were in, and I felt, it would be a smaller pullback, but it turned out to be a bigger pullback. What do you think there, Josh?
Yeah, no, I think that I learned from the previous cycle, and my reason for cutting, I'll give you one more reason for cutting. The fact is I had bought the majority of it in the winter, and I was up. I had said to myself in the winter, if this stuff goes up 200 or 300 or 400%. Like, I had different cryptos that I thought could go different distances. And I said, if it gets here, right, we're talking ultimate Fibonacci extension level, I thought, I'm going to be so happy. And the fact is we got there. And I asked myself, well, dang, I mean, what am I expecting? Bitcoin went from 15,500 to 110.
Yeah.
That's one
Yeah.
heck of a Bitcoin bull cycle. If we got that every single cycle, that would be equivalent to us
Mm.
pulling back to 50,000 in the months ahead or in the year ahead, and then hitting 500,000 in the next cycle. And so if we got to repeat, now listen to me, guys, if we got to repeat of what Bitcoin already gave us this cycle, that was incredible. And because I was sitting there thinking, like, how much more am I expecting Bitcoin and the alts to give me? When we were sitting there at 109,000, I thought, how much more am I expecting it to give me? I bought at the beginning. I bought at 17,500 and
Mm.
20,000 and 25,000
Yeah.
and 30 and 36,000. So how much more was I expecting? We're going to pull back at some point, a year from now,
Yeah.
let's say. We're going to pull back to around 50K. And if that is the bottom, and I could make my argument, I'm not calling that the bottom. I think 48 is where I'm going to begin to buy again. But and I think an absolute sheer panic, fear, apocalypse moment. It's when everybody thinks everything will fail. Maybe we could dip slightly below 40K for a day or two. But in general, I'm going to start buying right under 50K again. And if we did the same thing in the next cycle as we did in this cycle, it would be the same as if Bitcoin hit $500,000. And so, can you imagine people when Bitcoin is at 500,000 and I took my position of Bitcoin and doubled it over the winter? There's going to be people that are like, "Nope, I'm buying
Mm.
at 500,000," and Josh is going to be cashing in again. So, but I want to answer a couple questions here. Hey, Josh, Mark, are you guys going to the Bitcoin conference next month? I shouldn't speak for the rest of the stock squad, but I know Larry, Keenan, Mo, and me will all be there. And no, this is not Mo you're looking at. This is Kiwi Mo.
Yeah.
Could be a
Yeah.
distant cousin of Stock Mo, but this is Mark from Tribal Trades. The four of us from the Stock Squad will be at the Bitcoin conference. We don't have any formal plans to do a meet and greet, but I imagine if some of you guys are out there, we'd love to talk to you. It's a fun event. I'll tell you that after you go to the Bitcoin conference, there's one takeaway that I had. It's that you don't want to sell your Bitcoin. Nobody sits in a room with
Yeah.
Michael Saylor, leaves that room and says, I'm going to go sell my Bitcoin. Michael Saylor thinks it's all
Yeah.
going to 48 million. And you think, well, if he's just a little right, I don't want to be selling this stuff. It was after I heard Michael Saylor last year that I made a personal decision that I wouldn't sell my Bitcoin, even though I knew when we got to around 109, I thought this could be near the top, right? I kept the Bitcoin,
Mm.
sold everything else. Now, what do I own right now? Well, I own a handful of alts. I own some Sui, I own some XRP, I own some Ondo, but the position size is a fragment of what I had originally owned and sold. My conviction at this level, I don't want to give anything back because I've got a longer term strategy to take my wins and to reemploy them at the lows. If I do this right over the next 10 years, the wealth is unimaginable, but it takes a lot of discipline.
Yeah. So what do
Um,
you think about the four? I see some questions in here, Josh, about the 4-year cycle. I've been thinking about this a little bit. I think the 4-year cycle is still intact, but I am watching Bitcoin track more closely to stocks. And I actually wonder whether we'll see the big drop off that we've seen. I'm probably going to disagree with you a little bit here, that I wonder if we do actually ever see that 40, 50 Bitcoin again. I think possibly, depending on how high we go on this rip, I've been thinking more around that 69, 70K, 73K level where Bitcoin kind of topped out a couple of times, and that was the previous cycle top. But Bitcoin has been tracking more with the stock market. It kind of decoupled itself from altcoins, Josh. I want to know your thoughts on that. It's been following the price of gold. It lags it by about 100 days there, and we've all seen what gold has done recently, and Bitcoin's now just starting to follow right on cue about 100 days later. What's your thoughts on the 4-year cycle? Do you think that Bitcoin can more closely track with the stock market? Maybe we don't get those as big a sell-off, because historically Bitcoin has dropped 80% in the bear markets. What do you think about that?
I love the question. Thank you for the setup. Let me rip the heart of the bull out of their chest. Um, And you know what? I want you guys to just take a minute and forget that we're talking about crypto and Bitcoin and understand that the advice I'm going to give on this from the chart perspective is just classic charting. The majority of my success comes from understanding the charts and believing my eyes when I see them. Now let's go in and look at where support and resistance is. Ignore everything that you ever heard or thought about the story about Bitcoin, and let's just look at structure for 2 seconds with me, and then you will be convinced, like me, as to where this will go in the winter. Let me throw you in here. Okay, let's ignore some things. Let's clean this up for a minute. Okay. Well, we need that RSI chart, but I'll come back to it. Okay, guys, what had been resistance? This is Bitcoin Top 2021. Okay, what had been resistance becomes support. You see that right here. This gave us the new high. Okay, now, do you think that we're literally only going to drop one level after this cycle? For perspective, if we simply go back and test previous resistance that had turned support, if we test it one time, people that don't think we're dropping more than 60K, this is 58K right here. There's no way that we just go down one level. It just never happens. This was support here, okay? We came down to previous support there. Do you see me? So the levels of support that I see on this chart right here are two. Let me just clean this back up for a minute. I see two levels of support. We've got our first level of support, which is right here at 57. And then we have this secondary level of support, which is right here at 44. Okay. And so at bare minimum, I see us coming back to test these two levels. Okay. I see this being a shorter test and then some form of a bounce that brings us out of the winter and forward. But right here on this level is right around 40K. And so just from the standpoint, and really, to be honest, if you look at this, the likelihood is that we could even go as, I mean, I'm not calling it, but technically, if we broke 40K, we could go all the way down to 30. Do I think we'd go lower than that? No. I'm targeting 40 to 50 as my general buy zone for my additional Bitcoin in the future. I won't begin to touch the alts until I see Bitcoin somewhere closer to 44K. But let's just do a quick analysis here. How many days does it take to get from the top to the bottom? You're looking at 406 days. This is another way that I timed the bottom is if you go back and you track all the winters, they're all around. They actually are getting longer and longer. 360, 390, 411 was the last one. This next one could be 412. So let's go here real quick. It took 406 days to get oversold. If we come back up and we make a lower high on momentum, which is what I'm expecting we would do, we would create more bullish divergence because this high was created with a lower high here. So a higher price action, lower momentum. Now, this would be the third time that we would do that, which is in of itself unusual. 1, 2, 3 momentum peaks and then into the winter. It would take us some time to get down to this oversold state. And I think that we would end up at bare minimum between this 40, right around this 40K is going to be the golden reaccumulation zone for me. Maybe not too early, not too late, could go slightly lower, but in general, I think I want to be loaded right there. And I guess the main point that I'm trying to do here with you is one more thing I want you guys to understand. Let me clean this up. Mark made a comment about how much each winter Bitcoin has fallen, and he's correct in saying that each winter it's fallen less. So if we come back here to this peak, we see that it came down from this top to this bottom 85%. From the last peak to the bottom, it was only down 77%. So let's see, let's just do some really quick logic. 84, 77, let's just go with 60, okay? So we're showing that it is exponentially maturing and that it's falling less and less. So 84, 77, let's pick 60. Well, look at that. 60 lines us exactly up with this shelf of support and my $44,000 price. So I think it matters that we get up to about 114. We pull this up to maybe, let's see, right here, 116. That puts us at 61%, 60 to 62%. And that would seem about right. 84, 77, 62. Let me know, guys, in the comment section if you think that's about right. What are your thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, look, I think that it's possible. I think a lot of it will depend, Josh, on what the top is. You know, when we see that monthly MACD crossover and some of the other top signals come in, it'll be a lot easier, I think, to then navigate what the lower levels will be. You know, if Bitcoin goes to 200K, well, then I don't think the bottom will be 40 or 50K. However, if it gets to 120K, I do see how a 60K kind of region, 55, 60K could come into play. So a lot will really depend on when the cycle finishes, what the top number will be, and what that time frame is going to look like. But I do think some of the signals that we've given on your channel over the last few times that we've come here have been very, very accurate. The hash ribbons buy indicator would have got everybody in those mid 70s to high 70 region. The RSI, stochastic RSI, and the weekly crossing up over the 20% line there. Again, another great signal there as well. Also, so these are signals that are given and have been accurate and are accurate, and you called it accurately for buying. And really, I think when the top is near, I think again it will be obvious, and we'll be back here again, whether it be a month or 2 months or 4 months, and I think we'll be accurately giving where we feel the top is or close to it. And I don't ever say, oh, you know, I'm going to pick the exact bottom. I think as long as you get pretty close. I mean, at the end of the day, if Bitcoin goes to 100 or 110,000, does it really matter whether you bought it at 73 or 74? Absolutely not. And I think it will be the same thing on the way up. If the top happens to be 113, 114, or 115, it won't really matter a whole lot whether you sold it at 109 or 110 if you get pretty close. And I think now those signals are, very good and have been very accurate. And it's just the ability to interpret them and to help people, make sure that those profits get locked in. And you nailed it 100%. That really, 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 the number one thing last cycle, people didn't take profits. Again, here we are. The big issue that people have had is they haven't been taking profits. I've countless stories of people who are up tens of thousands of dollars but didn't lock in a single dime. I think the first thing that I teach on my channel anyway is get your original capital off the table in profit. If you put 50,000 in, you're up 100, 150, take your 50,000, put it back in the bank. Now it's protected. If you have a significant other, you can say, hey, listen, the money's back. Everything that I'm using now is house money. That's the true flex in trading, in my opinion. You have zero risks now on your trade, Josh, because all your money is house money and your original capital is off the table. And that makes trading a whole lot easier, a lot less pressure. And of course, we're hoping this time around, I do think people are going to be taking profits, or even people today, they're up or they're back to break even, and they're either scaling back their position and making responsible decisions, even if the market continues to go up. So I think what you've given is very wise advice. I think you've guided people wisely through this process, and it'll be very interesting to see what plays out as far as what the top does end up being. And then I think it'll be easier to provide guidance as to what the bottom might end up being in the bear market.
Well, Mark, I'm not going to tell other people's story, but some people that follow me and some people that even became crowned traders in my Discord actually got the money that their big seed trade account came from early buy alerts that I gave in the winter.
Yeah.
So they believed me, they followed me.
Yeah.
I told them exactly what I was going to do. They did exactly what I did. And by the time we got into this summer bull run, their accounts were fat, and it put them into the trade game, right? It elevated them. And I even had said that back in the day. I said, guys, if you do this, I said, you put in $25 a week. By the time we get into the bull run, you might have enough to buy a car or have a legitimate trade account that you can really build off of. And I've actually talked to a handful of people that literally did just that. 25 bucks a week, got to around 25K, started building a trade account, and now they're up above six figures. I love those stories. Let me go into a couple comments here. Hot Girl Summer Fire. I have no idea what that means. I just have to reference Queen. Let's get into this comment. Joey Curtis. You guys did not share a buy on Bitcoin. Please stop lying. Josh has been cautious the entire time Bitcoin was down. That is correct. I simply told everybody in the last video that Bitcoin would fall off a shelf, that it would hit 74 or 73 max. And I said, if at that point you want to take risk, you could take risk. I said, because I believe that at bare minimum, it will shoot back up to 90. So that was the only buy signal. And the truth is, I have been cautious. The truth is, I'm not loading back up. I have small bags because I'm in a different position than maybe a lot of people. My position is about wealth preservation. I remember, I'm gonna tell a quick personal story. My family, my mom's side of the family is pretty successful people, and they had a large store, a large business that was dominant in its marketplace, and these guys were making hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And I went and saw my uncle, and I said, "Hey, uncle, you know, how's the family business growing? Are you guys making money?" And he looked at me very seriously, and he said, "We don't worry about making money. Our biggest concern is keeping the money we made." Now,
Yeah.
you know, you get to different places in life and you have different problems. For me, right now, I made a ton of money. I plan on redeploying it in the winter. Could I play every day, every level, and squeeze every last inch out of the market? Sure, I could. Right now, I'm waiting for a clear sign to begin to short crypto. I will take the next big positions I take will be to maybe short the time Bitcoin hits 116. I'll beginning to look at confirmation of a breakdown. The first breakdown will be a cross back beneath 100. Once we get back above 100, the next time we come back below it, the show's over. I'll double my short at 90K. I'll continue to hold through 80 and 70, and I'll begin to unwind at around 60. So that's the next big play for me, and it's big plays I'm looking at. As far as small plays, I'm bullish right video. I'm telling everybody that it could fade out right before 100K. I think that if we hold that 84 to 86, that's critical. Matter of fact, I'll give it to you this way. If we can't hold 84 from this point forward, the show's over, guys. The show's over, and we're descending into winter. But if we come back and we bounce between 86 to 84, I think there's a strong likelihood that we still go north of 100K. And most of you need to think about your exit strategy at that point, and it should really get serious if we get above 110. Am I telling you to do a straight sell? No, I'm telling you to start resurrecting the idea of a stop loss. That's exactly what it does, is it prevents you from losing. So Joey Curtis is right about the fact that I'm not giving big buy signals on anything right now because I'm not heavily buying. I bought what I told you guys I was going to buy, and that's what I own. I want to comment on a few more things. July is rarely ever the end. Summer for crypto is sideways action galore. It will likely be another Q4 double top scenario. I'm going to give you a statistic, and all of my statistics that I've given you have proven to be true. At this end of the Bitcoin bull cycle, and I think everybody can agree we're not at the beginning of it. Okay, we're definitely more than halfway through. I personally think that we're about 85 to 90% through. But at this point in the cycle, when you get a cross up on the RSI or the MACD, it never has it lasted more than 90 days. So that's why I've come out and told you that middle of July is potential. And if we can't get it up by the middle of July, then we need to be more sober-minded about if we cross back beneath that 84 to say the game's over. The game's over. The only thing that will change what I'm saying from my point of view would be that perfect storm of bullish events. You know, President Xi running across the White House lawn, embracing Trump. Okay. Elon Musk
wearing a Bitcoin shirt.
Elon Musk in the background, you know, with, I don't know what he's doing, but typically jumping up like this. And, you know, the Fed just slashing rates back and forth. Well, then, yeah, maybe anything could happen. All right. Let's talk about XRP. So XRP again, congratulations. Just like I congratulated all of us Bitcoin holders, I have to congratulate all of the XRP diehards because this thing went from 55 cents stable coin, mode to all the way up to, just under $4, and it stopped short, right? And I'm gonna tell you this: my biggest position right now is XRP. So people would think, because I sometimes am not as bullish as the rest of you. You guys would think I hate XRP. No, I love the liquidity behind XRP. It's actually my single biggest altcoin position. These are small positions for me, but at this moment, it's my largest. I'm gonna ride it up to $2.75. Okay. And I'm going to get Mark's opinion. Then I'm going to pull up the XRP chart and I'm going to tell you guys why I'm doing it that way. Now, the minute we hit $2.75, am I going to sell? No, I could sell. I'm going to raise my stop loss and see what happens next. But I think we at least get to 275. Now, remember that after we get that initial cross up on Bitcoin, we had this huge green candle. Over the next 2 weeks, I'm expecting a little fade and then an additional pop. So same with XRP. We had this nice move up. Little bit of fade, maybe back to $2, 205, and then we get that final push up to 275, 280, and that's where I probably cash out and let all of you diehards try to ride it into the sunset. Mark, what's your opinion on XRP?
Yeah, look, I think that we just need to be careful with the alts that we're in. I think any of these should never be considered long-term holds. Last cycle, XRP and Dogecoin and many other altcoins topped out very early. Their tops were in April and May of 2021, and Bitcoin and Solana and other tokens went on and made new all-time highs. So I feel like we're at the stage of the cycle where some all-time highs might be in. So I would agree with you. I think I think that if Bitcoin does continue to go up, I agree with you. I think XRP and Dogecoin and other altcoins will go up, but I think some of them won't get back to all-time highs, which is something you said, Josh, earlier, that I think I want to bring that point back to people to understand that people won't be disappointed if suddenly Bitcoin makes a new all-time high in July or August or September, and their favorite altcoin tops out in May or June. And look, there's no guarantees that it'll be the same altcoins. Just because XRP and Dogecoin topped out early before Bitcoin doesn't mean that they will this time around. But I think it's just a real message to everybody just to be cautious. These are just trades for myself. I know they're just trades for Josh. We're just getting in, buying low, getting out high, and not looking for this to continue on, because most altcoins will actually, from now on, most altcoins, I don't believe they will get back to their all-time highs. Some will and some won't run with Bitcoin. And so I just think to be cautious there. XRP dominance has been dropping pretty heavily. Even price has been going up. The dominance has been coming down a little bit. So that's a little bit of a red flag, but I still do think XRP will have some legs here. And I do think a $2.75 price target is very realistic for it to get to. Does it get back to $3.40? I'm not so sure.
I think that's fair. Let me pop up the chart and give you guys my thoughts. And what I don't want from you guys is to hear me say I own XRP and intend to sell it 50 cents higher, and that's what you should do. It's 100% not what anyone should do. You guys need to do your own research. But I thought it would be helpful if I told you that I was in it and where I would largely like to see it hit before I begin to want to cash out.
Can I add something to the comment that was made before about
Yes.
how you didn't give a buy signal? I mean, you told everybody that you saw it going as low as 73K. You pretty much told people where it was going to go to within $500 accuracy. We can't tell people to buy, when to buy or when to sell. We're not financial advisors. This is not financial advice. It's education and entertainment. But I think people have to make up their own minds. But I think telling people where it was going to go within a $500 or $600 range there, I mean, it could have peaked into 73,900 and you're $600 literally inaccuracy there from, where was it, in the mid 80s or whatever it was.
It was
So I
80,
think that,
80. It had just come off at 84,000. It was right above 82. And I said, guys, we're going to lose 82
yeah,
tomorrow
you
and we're
did.
going to go down to 74. That all
And
came to
I
pass.
agree with that. And I said the same thing. I said 73, but I also said I had buy orders at 77 as well, and at 78 at other key, just in case it doesn't
Correct.
come down to that.
Let
Because,
me
if you try and pick bottoms, you miss out.
let me
I was
show
going to
this to
say,
you guys real quick. So I want to address this myth. SK, with big institutions buying and now countries coming in, 116K top, Josh is going to be wrong. You know, this is the belief that the world is fair and just, and that institutions are honest, and that powers that be are always looking after the interests of the people. I'm sorry to break anyone's heart. It's just not true. And let me give you some factual, or at least alleged information. In the bottom of the Bitcoin cycle, an analyst went and he figured out exactly how much. We got to this point. I've explained this story before, so listen very carefully because it's fascinating.
Mhm.
There was a point in time in which the exchanges began to fail. And there was a huge move on the part of Binance and Coinbase and all of the big players to report how much crypto they actually had on their balance sheet, because people were doubting it and people were pulling their money off of those exchanges left and right in the tunes of millions and billions of dollars. There was a flight and a fear because these exchanges were falling one after the other. And so the exchanges began to report how much Bitcoin they had on. And one guy took the time to add it all up for all the exchanges that had reported it, and there was 60 million Bitcoin. What's the problem with that? Well, 60 million Bitcoin don't exist. Only,
Yeah, paper Bitcoin.
yeah, there's only, I think there's 1 million left to mine, Mark, if I'm correct. There's 20 million have been mined so far.
There's not a lot left, yes, and there's not a lot on exchanges. Only about 2 million, I think, on exchanges. There's not a
Yeah, or
ton
just that
left.
was even in their ledger books, whether they're on the exchange or not. But the point I'm making is yeah, whatever had been calculated that was known, the exchanges had an elevated amount of Bitcoin that it didn't exist. And so what you guys have to understand is, if everybody was playing by the rules, then this idea of some sort of a
Mhm.
supply constraint could occur, right? But not everybody's playing by the rules, and it's not the world doesn't run by fair and honest and clean. And so,
Yeah.
you're over here thinking, you're believing those stories that I just don't believe. Okay, Bitcoin's becoming a mature asset, it's leveling off, and this cycle performed 100% predictably compared to previous cycles in which the moves have been slowing down. I've showed you guys in the past that the first Bitcoin pump cycle was 60,000%. The second one was
Mm.
22,000%. And then the next one, I think, then we got to, was it 60, 20, 16, and then 2000, and this cycle was 400%, right? I believe it was 400%. You can clearly see everything is slowing down and we've got mass adoption. And then let's just say for a minute that everything was fair and all the exchanges were playing by the rules and there was no manipulation whatsoever. The fact is, now you've got companies like BlackRock and that are interested in manipulating the price of Bitcoin, having pure linear control of the
Mhm.
exchanges, of the miners. They want to control all of it, and they're going to do the same things that they did with stock, which is they're going to dump on retail, they're going to pump it later, they're going to shake the paper hands out. And I don't mean to be so I guess you could say cynical, but you just cannot believe the story that this is a perfect asset that's going to have a perfect ascension higher. It's maturing, it's slowing down, and there's going to be a ton of manipulation. And it's actually been very predictable. And that's why I took profit. And that's why I'll buy again when it gets to 44K.
Mm.
What are your thoughts, Mark? Am I hitting them too hard today?
Listen, I see all these supply shock tweets on X, and it's the same ones that I've seen, for years, and it's just the same. There are a lot of rumors of paper Bitcoin, and FTX was doing it. So, you know, it would not surprise me if much of this is true. So yeah, it's very hard to believe with, you know, all this, you know, Bitcoin being scooped up and the price as what it is. So there's a lot of truth in that, and I think it's just important to understand price is truth. You know, let the chart speak to you. I think we'll be. I think it'll be pretty close to the top when we're able to see, hey, this is a good time to get out. This is a good time to sell. Just like you did with the 73K bottom there, it was pretty close there, 74,000. And I know that I was telling people to buy. I wasn't on YouTube then, but I was telling people to buy at 15,000 people. I'm like, people was calling for it to go to 5K. And I was like, no way, the bottom is in. It's time to buy. And those that bought, obviously, were able to really benefit from that greatly. So I do think that we just have to watch the charts. You know, I had 120K on the radar for a long time. I did move that up before we had this big sell off here to a little bit of a higher number. And, you know, but I don't see any reason why it can't get back to around that level. I thought maybe even the market makers kind of, we don't get a new all-time high. That would be one for the books, wouldn't it? If it got up to like 105 or 106 and then capitulated from there, that would take everybody by surprise. So I don't think anything is off the table at the moment, but I think just evaluating the charts day by day, week by week, month by month, watching price go. And that's what I've learned from you, Josh. You come out here and you just share what you see in the charts. And then a month later, something may have changed, and you have to have the ability to adapt to that and be able to, you know, say, hey, I actually think it could go higher. I think it could be a lower. I think the end could be at a different month, because it's very easy just to throw numbers out here and speculate. Everybody's throwing numbers out at the moment, but I think it will be a lot clearer when we get near or at the top. I think there will be signs.
Yeah. Someone asked about MicroStrategies, gave a nice little drop there. Let me jump you guys into the chart. Give me 1 second. Okay, MicroStrategies. Just go through it real quick. Same here. Right here, we got the cross up on the RSI. Right here was a buy signal where it crossed up on the RSI right down there. It became oversold, right? We had this beautiful move up. Well, we just got one. It's the beginning of the move. This is the reason why I'm doing the video today, is because MicroStrategy, Bitcoin, and crypto has the potential of a pretty nice move. Even if this does a little back test here, okay, does a little back test, I'm expecting this to make a higher high. And so I could see MicroStrategies having a pretty, MicroStrategy, not G's, I could see it having a pretty nice move. You go down to the MACD, and right here, we got this cross up here, same place before, gave a huge pump. We're getting ready to have another cross up right here. This hasn't confirmed yet, so just keep your eyes on that. It has to confirm. But in general, this is where risk taking would make sense. This is where buy signals are being printed. We're still in a sketchy environment as we move towards the summer. If we start getting some trade deals worked out, we could see the markets decide that they want to wipe out the bears and for this to climb. Does this mean that we're guaranteed going higher? No, we haven't crossed on the MACD yet. We could have a fake out. We could have a rejection and it could go lower. We could reject here and we could get to oversold. But right now, I would say that this is overall leaning bullish. It's the reason why I'm doing the videos, because I do see that Bitcoin is going to give everybody that chance to make a decision about the remainder, the final 10, 15, 20% of this bull cycle. And I'm coming out here really because my money, I mean, my money's set. I've already got my plan. I'm not changing my trade plan. I've already taken my positions. I already know when it is I'm going to buy again. I'm coming out here to say, guys, you're probably going to get your 100K, your 110, and maybe even this range right up under 120. What are you going to do? And let's say that you get, because I remember, man, Mark, when we were at 82 and I was telling everybody it was going down to 74, they were saying, they're filling the comments section saying, man, if this gets back up to 90, man, I'm going to get out. If this gets back up to 100, I'm going to get out. And I said in that video, I said, you're going to find it harder than you think. So you really
Yeah.
need to make a decision. Now, I stick to my trade plans. Sometimes that works for me, sometimes it doesn't. What I find is that I become consistently profitable and wealthy because I had a
Yeah.
plan to begin with. Okay.
Yes.
You're not going to, every single one of your plans isn't going to work, but if you don't have a plan at all, then you guys know the saying is you're planning on
Yeah.
failing.
Yeah.
Um,
It's very good.
some,
Well, Josh, have you heard about the new company being formed, 21, that's going to rival MicroStrategy? 42,000 Bitcoin is what they're starting with. They're backed by Tether and is it SoFi Bank or SoftBank? Do you think that's going to affect MicroStrategy price or market dominance, as it's kind of the big one that's in there as a stock with Bitcoin? And this will be strictly for just holding and acquiring Bitcoin.
well,
What are your thoughts on it?
I'm going to answer that a little bit indirectly. And I want to remind everybody about something. By the time you hear the story, Wall Street already took the position. So the time that you
Mm,
hear the
yeah,
story, that's when they're selling into strength. So MicroStrategy is coming up off the lows. It's pushing towards the top. And I just want everybody to know that the smart money are the ones that stopped this from falling and started buying the bottom. It wasn't you and I, it wasn't retail. They're the ones that turned it around and began to push it higher. And eventually, as this gets higher, they're going to begin to sell it. And so just remember that by the time this thing is hitting back to all-time highs, there's going to be a bunch of people that pile back in, believing that these companies and what they're doing with Bitcoin matters, when in my opinion, it largely doesn't. The
wow.
So that's when people are going to be selling. It's going to be a buy the rumor, sell the news. And you have to remember that the last time we saw Bitcoin peak, didn't MicroStrategies begin to fall apart right before Bitcoin topped? People were taking profit on the riskier asset earlier. Okay. Similarly, if we get to 116,000, it wouldn't shock me if MicroStrategies hits its top, and everybody else is going to be saying, but Bitcoin's going higher. Why is
Mm,
MicroStrategy slowing down? I'm just going to keep buying the dip on MicroStrategies because Bitcoin's going higher, not realizing that MicroStrategies is the riskier trade to Bitcoin because it's 2x Bitcoin, and smart money is unwinding their MicroStrategies position early. Just keep that in mind.
yeah, very true. MicroStrategy tends to run very closely correlated with Bitcoin. So that's a great point. Keep an eye
Um,
on the price of
I get
MicroStrategy. If you
a
start
lot of
out
people,
before Bitcoin, might be time to get out of both.
I get a lot of people in the comments who are more bullish than me. Um, and I like Mr. CJ says Josh is right. I don't know about 95% of the time, but what I take from it is I'm not always right. Nope. And sometimes I'm early, sometimes I'm late. Really, all I'm doing is sharing what I'm doing with my money. Let me see what else I got here. Josh, will altcoins drop with Bitcoin after it reaches the top 116 or so? That's a great question because typically there is a peak in the altcoins after Bitcoin tops. It's sort of money begins to flow out of
Yeah,
Bitcoin into Ethereum, which in this cycle has been Solana, and then from Ethereum and Solana, we'll say, into the other alts, and then eventually into the meme
yeah.
coins. It does seem to me like this particular cycle did not follow previous. It did follow, but not as clear and distinct as strong. Mark, what's your opinion as to whether or not we'll get a final altcoin pump after Bitcoin tops out?
Yeah, usually it is, but it's not for long, and it's not every altcoin. And so I think, again, you just have to be positioned in the right coins at the right time and take your profits. And I think that it's just, it's dangerous if you're trying to sell right at the exact top, because you can have the rug pulled out from underneath you, literally. And before you know it, you're down. I like scaling into positions. This Bitcoin position, I built that position. I added it different levels between 74 and the low 80s, and I plan on scaling out as well. I don't plan on just one single sell at the top, unless there's some one moment where the wheels fall off and I just want to get out and cut the position. But I plan on scaling out And if you watch, that's what smart money does as well. What do? They sell into strength. And you just said it about MicroStrategy, and you're spot on. They sell into strength while retail is FOMOing in, because how are they going to get out otherwise? If everybody else is getting out at the same time, there's no one to buy. For every seller, there has to be a buyer. And so the smart money actually gets out earlier, okay, and they sell into strength, and retail is FOMOing in, and smart money is actually selling to retail. Then the top comes, and then it capitulates, and there's nobody to buy. And it just falls. It's like a house of cards just falls down. And so I just think, just to be careful what coins they will be. I don't think it will be everything. And last cycle, it was just a few coins that lasted a little longer, and there was a little bit more juice that got squeezed out of it. But I just think, panic sell the greed and be panic buying the fear. And I think if you keep that kind of mentality, I think you'll do well in any cycle.
Yeah, I agree with you. Good advice. If I talked about XRP every day, my videos would get 50,000 views, easy, because there is an XRP army. And I love XRP. I feel like I should get an honorary XRP army badge, even though I'm not quite a member. But I do like this comment. XRP is my favorite meme coin. You got to know that's going to burn them. Let's go look at the XRP chart, because I own it. I love it. It's my largest position in alts right now. Let's go check it out. So I just want to point out some things. RSI. And the reason why I do well with crypto is because I just hold it to the same technicals as I do everything else. And there's even people that don't believe that you can do that, but it works perfectly. 80 is typically the top. This was the top here, right? Not in price. Let me just in momentum. Okay. So right here, we got a price top and a momentum move of 80. And once that happened, the momentum moves were over from that point forward until we got into winter. Now, here's the point I'm making. After it fell beneath came back and hit the 50% level, it eventually began to move its way back up and bounced and made a lower high. I don't think that's happened yet in this cycle. Matter of fact, we just now are bouncing on the 50% level. And that's why I took a nice size position in XRP, because I believe that we are going to make potentially, we're going to make a higher high than we are in right now. A lower momentum high, okay, and possibly a higher high price. But right now, I got in here right above $2. My goal is to put my stop loss in at 275. I think we could go to 440. We could go to 5, but I will definitely be raising my stop loss from 275 and up. This is a reasonable spot for people to take risk on SRP, because we made that 80% peak on the RSI. We've come back and bounced on the 50. Now we're going to slowly make our way higher, just like you see right here. I think we're going to slowly make our way higher. We'll make a lower momentum high, but we should make a higher price high. And then after that, it's all over, and we fade back down probably to around 76 cents. I always laugh because I know that I'm burning. XRP people are so mad at me right now. You have any thoughts on that, sir?
I think 440 is your XRP should be happy. I think that's a really bull case scenario. And look, I'm not saying that can't happen. It's certainly possible. $4, $5, $6, absolutely possible. If you look at the market cap, 10, 15, I don't think so. But I think you're being reasonable. I think you're being kind. The one concern that I would have with XRP is that apart from that big November pump that we've seen, it took off on the connection with the current administration in November and jumped November, December, January. It really didn't do anything else in the bull market. And my only concern will be, was that pump fueled by the rumors of some kind of connection to the White House and relationship there, which doesn't seem to be materializing? And, I would think that maybe XRP needs some kind of a catalyst to get moving again. And I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Will the ETF be approved? Will there be some kind of relationship formalized? It doesn't seem like it. It seems like it's really cooled off, and there hasn't been really any talk about it for a little while there. So that would be my only concern, that the pump Was it purely fueled by that photo with Trump, on X, and everything seemed like, oh, XRP is going to be the blockchain and, all this stuff, and it's going to be part of the basket. And now it doesn't look like it's going to be part of the basket at all. And so is there something else that can take XRP to those highs up there? I'm not so sure. It'll be an interesting one. I do think it's a higher risk play as opposed to other coins such as Sui. I'm more bullish on Sui. I think Sui has had many pumps over this bull market, has been more consistent. It doesn't have any big relationship there that it was able to pivot off, and it's done incredibly well, up 100% in just like 9 days. From not 9 days, but $2.10 to $3.40 in just 9 days, and then from the low about $1.71 just over the last few weeks. So I'm a little bit more bullish on Sui. I think it's probably the better and the safer play between the two. I know you're also bullish on Sui. I think the hallmark for me, if I look back at this bull run, one of the most memorable moments when you were imploring people to buy Sui at around 70 cents, and people were asking about this coin and that coin, and you were saying, what about Sui? What about Sui? And those people and I don't think I've ever seen you as wanting people to buy a coin without telling them to buy a coin at that moment. And then that obviously went and did a whopping about 500% from that moment onwards and became the real star of this bull run, in my opinion, just like Solana was the star.
Yeah, I
of
agree.
one.
Sui was.
I'm very bullish on Sui. And I do think it's a better and safer play, but I do see how XRP can reach those levels. But I do think it's going to need a catalyst, because that's what gave it its pump for November, December, January.
I love what you broke down, and I agree with you completely. And I guarantee you, Mark and I, in the middle of the winter, not the physical winter, but the crypto winter, him and I are going to be dialing each other up going, hey, man, what do you think about Sui? Is it time to load the bags? Is it time to back up the truck?
Exactly.
And, I'm going to, we're going to do it, right? But let me, someone earlier said, these guys are boomers. You can't listen to them. I have a lot of young friends calling me up and asking me what's going to happen to crypto next because they've been following me. But let me just jump into Sui real quick and give you guys my insights on that. So this is a very, let's go traditional MACD. Okay. So back here, right? This is actually when I originally called Sui a buy back at 70. It was like 72 cents at the time. This was crossing up on the MACD. Okay. We actually had been beneath the MACD, right, on the daily time frame. We crossed up, back tested, broke momentum high, and that was in this range, okay? And that led from 70 cents all the way up to basically $5.30. Now, here's what I want everyone to pay attention to is we've got another move on the MACD. So look at this entire time. And right here, I told everybody, I came out and told a video, I said, guys, we lost the MACD. We're getting ready to go into a bearish season. I said, I'm completely out. I actually had sold up here, but I did a video saying everybody needs to be aware that we just got a sell signal on the MACD. We entered into that bearish season, giving all the way down to $1.75. And look, guys, we just got another buy signal. It's another cross up right here. So this could be leading to even a retest of 496 or even a higher high. So I would tell you that I'm not interested in buying this until I'll tell you exactly where I would load up some more. If you didn't get in, this is where you would consider. Now, I wouldn't tell you where you should buy, but as far as a back test, you're going to be looking, let me get this coordinate for you, $2.84. That's your back test level. So if you didn't get any Sui on the breakout, yes, and on top of it, this RSI, this initial pump got a little hot. I'd like to see it come back and bounce off of the signal line. So I'd like to see it touch there, okay, on the RSI. And I think it'll do that right around $2.80. For me, that would be a load backup moment for the possibility of this final push. But I'll tell you that my stop loss will get put in at 350 the day we get above that, and I'll be slowly raising it. And if I get kicked, I'll leave it alone from that point forward.
Very good.
I wanted to do Solana real quick because someone here asked 58 times.
Yeah. Well, Solana, that went from $12 all the way up to $295. So it's worth taking a look at Solana, which has outperformed the majority of the market this bull run.
All right, let's look
definitely.
at a few things here. One, it's very obvious when you look at this volume bar here that this was a capitulation and a buy moment. And then, of course, you guys see that I drew this descending bullish channel. At bare minimum, Solana has a date with 168. Okay, between 165. So at bare minimum, we're going to come up and touch the top of this channel. And this is still in a bullish trend. If we pop up the MACD, probably we would probably get up to this 70. And notice on the, I'm not the MACD guys, the RSI, notice how we're making a series of lower momentum lows. And if we hit this 70, it'll be the 1, 2, 3, fourth time we've made a lower momentum low. So it's a reminder that we need a reason for all of this to really scream higher. I'm calling Sui. I'm sorry. I'm calling Solana up to 165. It's sitting at 151 right now. We have a buy signal on the MACD. The sell signal was right here. If you had simply gotten out of your Solana position when it was 208 and this crossed beneath the MACD line, you could have got back in at 92. You could have exited at 215 and got in at 93. Come on. You know, that's why I love the MACD. For day traders, the MACD is the most popular indicator. And right now it's printing a buy signal. And so I'm not saying it'll only get to 165, but at bare minimum, I see it respecting this channel. And so I see an initial move up to 165. We could get a back test here to this 126. If you didn't get into Solana, you could say, I'll play it safe and only get in at 126 for potential move higher to 168. It's bullish. There's a buy signal. I like Solana a lot.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, I'd love for you to chart a coin that has gone up 100% just in the last 2 weeks. Potenza Tau, TAO. Great strength. And it probably was one of the first altcoins that took off and led this rally. I don't think you've charted it before, and I know there's a lot of people in the Stocks with Josh Discord and Tribal Trades Discord that are holders of this. And so I'd love for you to chart that if you can bring that up.
Yeah.
And some technicals on that, or where this move could go to, because a bunch of us got in around 223, and that's up now around $353.
That was a smart entry. Let me show you guys what they did. So this is a key level of support where they got in right here at around 218, I would say. And that's about where they got in. It was an area where it back tested and it moved up. Now, I'm just going to point out to you that we are at resistance right now. You can see that this is clear resistance. And so we are sitting at resistance right now. And momentum is a bit hot. It just got overbought on the daily time frame. And so I could see a little bit of chop and struggle in this range. But what I do like is back here, the MACD again. Let me minimize that and let's look at the MACD. The MACD, when we got a sell signal right here. Okay. So Tau, anybody that was in Tau should have got out at 548 in December. The same time I was getting out of stuff in December. Right there was a sell signal crossed below the MACD 0 line. It never was able to get back above this entire time, made a lower low, and it's just gotten above. So right here was the buy signal, right when you guys got in. So I would say that this move is probably just beginning, but I likely will have a little bit of a back test. So if I had to find an area where it would back test, that's very difficult to come up with. There's strong support at 288. So I cannot say that it'll get back to 288, but if we did get a pullback and people wanted to consider risk again, it would be at 288. That's if you get it. If you're, let me, 288. I'm not saying it'll get there. There's a buy signal on this now. Great entry for everybody who took it right there. And there's clear resistance at this 3. It's sitting right now at 360. So this is clearly resistance here. So, I wouldn't be surprised if people wanted to lock in some profit. If I had gotten in at this 220, I probably would be trimming my position down to runners at this point. Now, where could it go? If this move is truly just beginning, we have a little bit of a descending channel. Since this top, if this was an altcoin top, it has to get above this momentum. So it would have to make a momentum move above 41, which is actually a similar area back here. So it has a little bit of a momentum ceiling. If this continues to build and eventually gets above 41, then we could see it get all the way back to all-time highs. At the moment, I would say that I would hold this and I would buy it on the dip. But I do think that we're in the tail end of the bull season. And so it could be that 488 would be the top. That's the most logical
Yeah.
next top right there. And if we are at the end of the bull season, then, and this continues to run, 488 might be the best that everybody gets on it. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. A lot of people have been asking, where to get in if they miss that 230 buy level. And I've given around the same thing, around 290, 280, 290 area, I think would be good. Maybe 300 if that really came out as some strong support there. That would be more of an aggressive entry there. And then I was looking more at probably around if it doesn't get back to its previous all-time high, I think, around 524, I think is the 618 on the fib for this current move. And I think getting back to that would be decent. But obviously, if we make a new all-time high there, this thing could really fly. There's only 21 million supply for this coin, so it's like Bitcoin in that respect. It's AI. AI is a hot narrative at the moment. The AI coins have been absolutely crushing. Render, been absolutely crushing, along with some of the other AI coins. Potenza Tau, Fetch, another one. AGIX is another one that's been doing really well. So I think if that narrative can continue, then some of these AI plays could be really, really, really good, and especially one that is a blockchain. And of course, Barry Silbert is behind it, and he's the one that, he was the original Michael Saylor that was buying up Bitcoin $11, created the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust that's been going, for over a decade now, which converted to an ETF. And this is his new all-in play. So if he's had as much success as he had with the Bitcoin, and I'm not saying Tau will be comparable to Bitcoin. I think there's only one Bitcoin, but I do think if there was one coin that could possibly follow in Bitcoin's paths, maybe this is a play. And I think people are jumping on that narrative now, and that's why we've seen that kind of lead this rally out of the altcoins. It's definitely led this rally.
I think that that's very fair. WIF. Now, I'm only going to talk about WIF because there's someone in here begging me to talk about it, and I love you guys. Let's talk briefly about WIF. I was looking at sound a moment ago because somebody was asking me to look at sound, and sound is showing it's not super strong. I like sound. It's not super strong. You got to start looking at the term relative performance or relative strength. It means that any stock you own, you should always want to be in the stock that in that sector is performing the best out of the stocks in that sector. So if you're going to be in the miners, I don't particularly care for them, but if you're going to be in the miners, you want to find the one that's showing the absolute strongest price strength. Yeah. If you're going to be in the altcoins, like we talked about Sui today, you want to be in ones that show the absolute best strength there. XRP did very well this cycle, so don't sleep on XRP when we get a chance to buy it in the winter again. But let's look at WIF real quick and just mention the fact that it's actually not doing too bad. It's getting ready to cross this zero line, which I keep referring to as a buy signal. The last time it did that back here, it had a pretty nice move up. So it moved up. Let's look at the percentage move. It moved up 200%. So if we do get this cross, and you have the chance to buy it right here, this could go up. If it had a similar move, it'd go up to $1.42. Now, I'm not predicting that. I'm just talking about similar moves, but I think it's worth, if you get that cross up, I think it's worth taking some risk on these. But in particular, we're late in the cycle. Meme coins will get crushed the most. I'm not going to touch WIF. If I were to take any chance on a meme coin, and again, it's not because it's the best in class, it would be Doge. Why? Because I know the chart very well and I'm comfortable with it. You spend a lot of time with the chart studying it, you get to know
Yeah.
it pretty well. So I would probably fall back to Doge. You guys know it's sort of, for me, Doge is the Bitcoin of the meme coins. And I probably, if I were to do any meme coin trading, it would be there. Meme coins were rocking at the beginning of the cycle. I think we're
Yeah.
at the 90% mark. So I do think
Yeah.
that they could have
I
another
agree.
push, but they're going to also die before everything else, perhaps.
Yeah,
I
and I
appreciate.
also agree with you, Josh, too, because Dogecoin has higher market cap, so less likely to capitulate. So it's a safer bet. But then also, most of these meme coins, and a lot of the lower cap altcoins, if they're down 80, 90%, what do you think all of those who bought the top are going to do as that altcoin or meme coin begins to rise? They know we're near the end of the cycle. They want to get out, and
Correct.
they see you and I as potential exit liquidity. And I don't want to be nobody's exit liquidity. Okay. So I want to stick with, I think, the stronger, safer bets, the Suis, the Bitcoins, the Taos, the Ondos. Those are my plays at this point in the cycle. There was a time for meme coins, and meme coins flourished. And that's not to say what Josh said, we could do 100, 200%, but it's so high risk because there are so many bag holders that are in loss that are just waiting to dump their bags and get out on any kind of pump.
I agree with what he said 100%. Jared Day said, super chat. Thank you, Jared. Josh, do you think the stock market will have a massive prolonged sell-off concurrently with the upcoming crypto winter, similar to what the stock market has
Good
crashed with the
question.
crypto winter in the past? I'm going to answer this as best I can and say that I am maintaining the possibility that we will see a 35% decline from top to bottom in this next 12 months. I don't believe that we may not be able to avoid a recession. So that's the bear case. The bull case is that Trump gets some of his work done. He's president, get the tariff deals worked out. That's what we need. That's what he's supposed to do, and gets the market working again. And the AI story begins to be relevant, as it will basically drive profit margins. There's going to be more unemployment, but it's going to drive profit margins. It should drive some stocks higher. And I think that we could actually finish 2025 with brand new highs and about moderately up between 12 to 15%. So not as big of a gain as we saw in 2023 and 2024. So I would say on the best case scenario, we go up around 12 to 15% this year. Worst case scenario, this whole tariff war becomes an absolute crap show and the market freaks out. The Fed's holding rates high and we go down a full 35%. At that point, I'd buy in heavy, 8 figures, and I'd be holding for the next couple of years. I don't think there's an alignment between crypto and the stock market. Stock market, does have recessions, but they're not consistent like they are in crypto.
Yeah. So, Josh, do you think that whether we see a lower low in the stock market is just entirely contingent upon the tariffs being resolved, or would you be someone who's prepared to say, look, I still think the stock market's going down lower than what we've seen? Like, do you think there'll be lower lows than what we've seen already?
I think that, okay, that's a great question. And I was probably the subject of tomorrow's video, but let me go and tell you, let me go and show you guys. So, not default me. Let's go to chart screen. All right. So best case scenario. So this is the target. I mentioned it in recent videos. This is our max test zone. So where could we go right now if we continue to climb through this earnings season? We could get a full back test of 575. So to me, that's the end of the road. It's a clearly defined resistance zone, breakdown zone, back test zone. And this is where the up move could eventually end, right? If we were to actually get above it, it's like if we got up to this level and then all of a sudden we got back to back good tariff news, we could even get back to a place where everybody forgets we were in a downturn and we start recovering. So I've been saying this for a while, that in the short term, the risk is to the bears because we're in earnings season. Some companies like Google reported tonight. Look at this, guys. Google's a rocket ship, right? It crushed it. So the more and more big earnings start coming in and people are doing better than they thought, we find ourselves over the next couple of weeks or the next 30 days getting closer to this resistance line. And then Trump starts firing with some worked out deals. We could literally find ourselves above it. So ever since we got oversold on the Magnificent Seven, I've been consistently saying that the risk is to the bears. It's why I
Wow.
held a bunch of skips and a bunch of leaps. And you say, "Well, Josh, are you all in on this market?" No, I don't have the I don't have the guts to go all in. I'm cautiously bullish. That's been the theme of every video this last week. I'm cautiously bullish. I'm cautiously bullish on Bitcoin. Right now, Google's leading the way. Netflix has led the way. Tesla jumped, even though their earnings were terrible.
Yeah.
It just tells
Yeah.
you that all the bearishness has been priced in. The
Wow.
risk is on the bears right now. Ever since we got oversold on the Mag 7, this market's been chopping higher. And so that's my view. And I'm going to be moderately holding risk and largely day trading. My scalps work very well. The scalps I gave in the Discord today worked very well. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about and you made it this far in my video, I assume most people in here are part of the community, but I have a pro trading community where I talk stocks and crypto and give daily trade setups. Those work for me. And I'm going to continue to work those, have moderate position size on my swing trades that I'm holding overnight. And right now, since we've been pumping, I've been sort of decreasing my position. Yet if we get any pullback, right, we make any type of pullback, 2%, I'll probably reload the boat. But it's okay if I miss a little bit of the move to the upside. I don't want to overtrade. We did really well. I do think ultimately the SPY could hit that 560 to 575 range. That's currently what I'm expecting in the next 2 weeks.
I think that's great. Someone just said, "Why are you saying wow to everything?" Because wow, this is awesome stuff, guys, and you're getting this for free on YouTube. You're getting some great analysis there, and I love that. I think the title of your show tomorrow, what is it? The risk is to the bears there,
Yeah.
and so much doom and gloom that I'm hearing, and I wanted to, because we didn't get a chance to talk before the show. People think that we collaborate and we agree on everything. Absolutely not. We didn't even get a chance to talk before the show. Sometimes we do. We talk for a couple of minutes, and just to hear this absolutely fantastic analysis is a wow. And everybody should be smashing the like, hearting, subscribing to this channel, leaving a comment on here. Just some fantastic analysis there. What do you think about the MACD on the monthly on the SPY? Because that's had a crossover. Generally, that's been quite bearish for the SPY. Do you think maybe that leads to, we have a bit of a dead cat bounce scenario, like you were saying, with the 575?
Yeah. So the last time we had a death cross, Mark, the last time we had a death cross, the market rallied for the next 2 weeks and crossed
Yeah.
back above the 200-day moving average, gaining additional 3 or 4%, and then it
Yeah.
got back into sell mode. So I'm
Right.
leaning towards the possibility of us hitting that 575, and
Yeah.
then like I said, it would take a ton of good news to keep it moving higher. My default
Right.
would be that this crap show in Washington, and I'm not trying to get political, but guys, this could work out, but it's not
Crazy.
going too well. Okay, it could work out, but it hasn't worked out yet. But if all of a sudden it begins to work out and we're at that 575, well, then it wouldn't shock me if the market runs. The market's just trying to get through uncertainty. However, if we get to that 575 and you begin to see heavy selling pressure and nothing's worked out and the Fed's holding rates, then yes, I think we'll go on to make a lower low than we made this year. Let's leave it there. Thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate everybody who watched the whole show. Look forward to seeing you guys again in tomorrow's show and in the comments section. Mark, thank you for being my valued guest. Guys, you can find
Thank
him on his own
you.
show on
Appreciate it.
YouTube called Tribal Trades. He's dropping gems and unique research each and every single day. Appreciate all of you guys. Peace and blessings. We'll see you in the next video.